It's going to take a bit. Thank you.
Senator Menendez.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just start off as someone who understands being falsely accused. I believe that due process, at the minimum, requires notice, due notice and time, and an opportunity to be heard. And so to the extent that we're going to challenge, which is perfectly legitimate, nominees, having notice so that a fulsome answer to any of those issues could be had is something that I would hope that the committee would make as its practice. Now, let me say that I regret to say that I have a strong objection to Ms. Taylor's nomination, because the State Department will be getting a damn good legal advisor. And since I know that legal advisors can often create challenges for the interests of the committee as it relates to meeting things that they want from the State Department, I wish she was on this side of the ledger, even though we have a great counsel here at the committee than there, but I know she will do an extraordinary job. I do hope that as part of that extraordinary job, you'll remember the obligations under the CASE Act to this committee, and that you will advise the department appropriately. Do I have your commitment on that?
Absolutely, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm interested in all these nominees, but I only have limited time, so I'll submit some questions for the record. But let me focus on Mr. Woodhouse, because as the architect and author of many of the sanctions that you will be called upon to coordinate for the State Department, I want to pursue some with you. Iran continues to deny any direct involvement in the attacks of Iran-based groups against the United States in the Middle East. However, there's no denying that its proxies do not have the weaponry and intelligence capabilities to execute such attacks on the United States without Tehran. If confirmed, you would be the lead sanctions diplomat responsible for coordinating sanctions and ensuring their full implementation. So, Mr. Woodhouse, do you believe that our sanctions on Iran have been effective? Is there more, if you were confirmed in this role, that you would be advising the State Department to pursue? Is it a moment, especially with what Iran is continuing to do, not only through its proxies and destabilizing of the region, but its violation of the IAEA's obligations that it has, for which we know less today than we did before, to internationalize those sanctions? Can you give me some thinking on that?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Iran is an adversary and one of the leading state sponsors of terrorism, and I would absolutely treat it that way. It is also one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world, with long-standing programs addressing the full range of its harmful and destabilizing activities. The Biden administration has not lifted any sanctions on Iran, and we've continued to implement and enforce those sanctions. This includes actions involving Iranian's oil exports, its support for terrorism, and its proxies in the region.
But for example, we're not sanctioning China, which is purchasing huge amounts of Iranian oil and is giving flow to the Iranians of money.
Thank you, Senator. We have, in a number of actions that have involved Iranian oil sales, we have designated entities in China, both in Hong Kong and mainland China.
Well, it's far from, we can not claim success with the flow that is going into China of Iranian oil, and therefore the flow of money that is going from China to Iran. Let me turn to Venezuela. I urge the Biden administration not to preemptively give away the enforcement mechanism that the United States possesses through sanctions until we saw real, tangible results from the Maduro regime. Then in January, I was sadly proven right when Maduro's hand-picked Supreme Court upheld a ban on the candidacy of Maria Corina Machado, the opposition candidate who won overwhelmingly last year's primary election. She is now barred. So when the primary opponent that the people have spoken already want this person to be their candidate is barred, then it seems to me that the Maduro regime has failed to live up to its end of the deal, and there have to be consequences from the United States and our allies. Maduro gains sanctions relief and other measures that only benefit the regime. How are you going to hold the Maduro regime accountable for failing to uphold the Barbados Agreement as Venezuela's presidential election remains set for July 28th?
Thank you for that question, Senator. We continue to believe that the Barbados Agreement is the most effective path forward to achieve a return to democracy in Venezuela. However, as you note, a number of actions by Maduro and his representatives have been inconsistent with that agreement and cast real doubt on their willingness to follow through on that agreement. We have already begun to pull back sanctions relief, specifically General License 43 involving interactions with the gold sector in Venezuela. And we've been clear that if Maduro and his representatives do not get back on track with the Barbados Agreement, we will not renew General License 44, which authorizes activities in the oil sector. So we are watching the situation very carefully, and we are prepared to allow General License 44 to expire and not offer any additional sanctions relief until Venezuela returns and gets back, or until Maduro and his representatives get back on track with the Barbados Agreement.
Well, I look forward to following up in written questions with you. These two issues, as it relates to your nomination, is of critical importance to me, and I'd like to see a more fulsome. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for you tonight to speak after your hearing. Thank you.
I'd welcome that, Senator.
Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, the world is more dangerous than any time since World War II, and this makes the work that we do on this